Right now, you can get any queen-size premium MyPillow regularly $69.98 for only $29.98. Go to MyPillow.com and click on the Radio Listener Square. Don't forget to use the promo code Carter. Gotta have my coffee. I gotta have my coffee just to stay awake all day long because there is so much news and things are just getting weirder and weirder and weirder. We have a great show today because I have a very special guest, my dear friend and a former colleague I used to work with at the Washington Times, and somebody who I believe I've learned so much from. Bill Gertz will be with us today. He is a phenomenal national security reporter and columnist. He did this huge piece, just came out. You got to read it. It's at the Washington Times. Bill Gertz's column, is incredible. And it focuses on China and the Wuhan lab and where the virus came from. And you're going to want to hear this. Bill has some of the best sources in Washington, D.C.'s in the defense industry and in the intelligence industry. And more importantly than that, you're going to love him because the Chinese Communist Party hates him. And we're going to talk about a lot more than that. We're also going to be discussing the fact that in the United States of America, apparently you cannot have an opposing position anymore. If you do, and if you say anything they don't like, they will actually call you a terrorist. Yeah, I can't believe this. I know you can't believe this. I have actually had friends of mine calling me, even people that, work in law enforcement, in the intel community, saying, what's going on here? How is this even possible in our country? Like, how have we come this far where we're taking domestic terrorism, which is real? I mean, sometimes it happens and it's dangerous. It's bad, of course. But we have categorized 75 million Americans pretty much who supported President Donald Trump terrorists. So we're going to dissect that. We're going to break it down for you. I think Tulsi Gabbard had some phenomenal statements. But before we get into all of these upside down world stories and strange things that are happening in our country, I want to talk to you about something that at least keeps me grounded. And that is AMAC. And AMAC offers an alternative to just about every benefit that AARP offers, but without the AARP liberal agenda. That's what they got. They have a liberal agenda. If you don't know that, you should. AMAC takes a stand in Washington to address the important issues like health care reform, immigration and border protection, fixing Social Security, reducing prescription drug costs, and so much more. I stand with AMAC, and I hope that you will too. I encourage you to join today at amac.us/Carter. That's CARTER. That's AMAC.us/Carter. The benefits of membership are great, but the cause is even greater. Join today at amac.us/Carter. It's just such a great program and just such a great family, and the whole history behind AMAC is something that you should all be proud of and be proud to be members of. So let's start from the top. Let's start about fighting for freedom, right? Why can't I say fighting? I feel like I'm going to say fighting for freedom and like the men in black are going to arrive, and handcuff me and take me out for questioning. Something like, the FSB in Russia, or more likely the KGB of the old Soviet times, right? It's like people are afraid to even speak now. I'm not joking about this. This is very serious. This is not something that we should just, okay, it'll go away. It'll blow away in a week or so. No, it's not. It's not going to go away. This is the exact reason that John Solomon and I, way back when we first started reporting on President Obama's expansion of powers during his tenure and how the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court went after him and chided him. This is the most secret court in the land, right? The most secret court in the land, because they actually give warrants to spy on Americans. That is something that our, basically protected right in the Fourth Amendment, right? So we've got two major things being threatened here under the Constitution. And we got to take this seriously. One is our First Amendment, the right to free speech. And then secondly is our Fourth Amendment. And that is our right to not have people just search our private communications, unreasonable search and seizure. We are protected. We are protected. We should be. But things are changing, and they are changing fast now. They are changing fast now. I want to play this clip. This is Tulsi Gabbard. She is brilliant. She is a true civil libertarian. I'm going to tell you this because civil liberties used to be something that all sides would fight for, and particularly the Democrats. That's why this is so weird to me. So I want you to hear what Tulsi Gabbard has to say about my favorite people, the people I talk to about all the time, former CIA Director John Brennan, wild and crazy Adam Schiff, and how these people are even more dangerous than what we saw with the Capitol mob.
The mob that stormed the Capitol on January 6th to try to stop Congress from carrying out its constitutional responsibilities were behaving like domestic enemies of our country. But let's be clear. The John Brennans, Adam Schiffs, and the oligarchs in big tech who are trying to undermine our constitutionally protected rights and turn our country into a police state with KGB-style surveillance are also domestic enemies and much more powerful and therefore dangerous than the mob that stormed the Capitol. Now, John Brennan said,
So I know looking forward that the members of the Biden team who have been nominated or have been appointed are now moving in laser-like fashion to try to uncover as much as they can about what looks very similar to insurgency movements that we've seen overseas, where they germinate in different parts of the country and they gain strength, and it brings together an unholy alliance frequently of religious extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, even libertarians.
Now, President Biden, I call upon you and all members of Congress from both parties to denounce these efforts by the likes of Brennan and others to take away our civil liberties that are endowed to us by our Creator and guaranteed in our Constitution. If you don't stand up to these people now, then our country will be in great peril.
Endowed to us by our Creator and protected by the Constitution of the United States. I want you to think about what she is saying there because she is 100% right. Listen to the rhetoric of John Brennan. Just put Stalin in his place. For any of you out there who are fooled, who think that by listening to this guy like, oh man, we've got domestic terrorists crawling all over America. I was there that day in the morning hours on January 6th, outside with the rally. And at that point, it was just a protest. It was a peaceful protest. People were standing out there. They were showing their support. They were waving. I've gone through this before with you. There wasn't this feeling that things were going to get out of control. Now, I did leave early afternoon. I was with my friend Gary Brugman, who was given a pardon by President Trump after waiting 20 years. I just want to throw that out there, Gary. You're the best, and you deserved that pardon. But I was with him, and I was with some friends celebrating that pardon. We went back. We weren't there. We went to visit somebody at the White House. The president was gone. There was pretty much no one in the White House. So whatever happened after that, you know how those feelings changed? I didn't witness that directly. But what I can tell you is this, based on what we've seen on television, we saw people lose control, a mob mentality, rush the Capitol. God help us, 5 people lost their lives that day. It was a terrible situation. But this wasn't, what he's saying is a lie to you. This is not an insurgency. I've spent my career in Afghanistan covering the war. I know what insurgencies are like. I've seen them firsthand. And by the way, John Brennan has too. Right? He was the former head of the CIA, and he's worked in intelligence all of his life. And so he does know what an insurgency is. What he is doing is called rhetoric. See, he was trained to do this, but he was trained to do this with an enemy. He was not trained to do this against the American people. He was trained to use rhetoric to go after foreign enemies, foreign enemy states. I want you to understand what he is doing here. He is using rhetoric and disinformation to go after Americans that do not agree with what has happened to our nation for the last decade or so, because this is a slowly progressive erosion of our freedoms. The people that we thought, the civil libertarians, right? Interesting how he said that, the libertarians. they were fighting. I mean, most of them were Democrats. Even the ACLU would be like, hey, wait a minute. You can't do that. Let's go back to the church hearings, right? The church hearings. That was Democrats. Democrats going after the NSA saying, whoa. You cannot spy military complex and intelligence community on Americans indiscriminately. You cannot do that. But they're doing it again. This time under the guise that you are under this great threat by your neighbors. Like we're all getting together in like some cave somewhere, like insurgents, and we're cooking rice over a stove that's made out of fire, and we're planning this great insurrection. That is just bull. And I'm allowed to say that because he's allowed to say what he just said. I'm not afraid because as far as I know, I still live in America. And I believe in doing things the right way. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in our children, in our country, in our schools, in our ability to help people all over the world. We're the most giving nation on earth. We are the most giving. No, John Brennan, we are not terrorists. We're Americans that believe in freedom, that we believe in our families. We send our children off to war to defend our nation. This is who we are. Somewhere along the line, this leftist radical mentality, this communist mentality has taken over in a way that I've never seen. I want to tell you this really quick. I know I've got Bill coming on the show soon, but I want to talk to you about this because it's important. A Florida man is charged with election interference. They are accusing him, the Eastern District of New York, of election interference for spreading disinformation using memes on his Twitter. Folks, I want you to think about this. The slippery slope that we are on. Seriously, do you vote for a particular president or do something because of a meme on Twitter? But no, this Florida man, his name is Douglas Mackey. He's a 31-year-old social media influencer, apparently. I don't even know who he is, who operated under the online name of Ricky Vaughan, was apparently charged with conspiring to spread disinformation designed to deprive individuals of their constitutional right to vote. So basically the government is telling you that you're an idiot, that Ricky Vaughan's memes could basically just stop you from voting. Like these memes, like you're not smart enough to like look at the like local news or go talk to your neighbors or go to the grocery store like at Safeway. I want you to understand what they are doing here. This is so scary. This is so scary. God, I hope I don't have any memes out there. I'm going to throw this out. Jenny, if there's any weird memes out there, just delete them off Twitter. Ha ha. Right? Now we're all scared. Now we're going to start deleting everything. Oh, geez, we're going to be arrested. I better delete my Twitter. I better not talk about this. I better not use the word fight. Hey, Kamala Harris, we've played that before here. She said many times, what about, Maxine Waters? Remember that? Too bad I didn't. I just thinking of this off the top of my head. When Maxine Waters was telling people to go out there and target Trump supporters. Do you remember that? Doesn't matter if they're in a restaurant. Doesn't matter if they're at church. Doesn't matter if they're using the bathroom. I don't care. Go target them. Target them everywhere. What does she mean by that? Right? Are they going to arrest her? Are they coming down to her house and handcuffing her and taking her out? Because she disenfranchised people, terrified them. They couldn't even go vote. They were so terrified because Maxine Waters told people to go after him. You know, what's happening to our country? Again, let me stress what is going on here. They don't like me because I'm going to tell you the truth. Because what John Brennan just did, he knows how dangerous that is. He knows what that does to people. By putting out this information that the intelligence, the U.S. intelligence community somehow is out there investigating us instead of China. I'm glad I'm bringing Bill Gertz on, and Chinese spies and, Russian spies and Iranian spies and people that want to destroy our country. These communists are saying, no, we're the ones that need to be investigated. We don't need to be investigated. Maybe we should investigate John Brennan. Maybe we should investigate James Comey. Maybe we should investigate all of their allies and their connections, like Mark Elias and all of these people. He's, by the way, an attorney that runs everything for the Democrats and is very controversial. Why don't we just investigate them? Oh, wait, because our Justice Department is on the take, too. So now we have nowhere to go. So now, because we don't have a voice, they're taking away our voice, too, right? On Twitter, Parler's gone. Where's Parler? Oh, that's right. They're protecting you. The stupid Americans, right? They're protecting all of us stupid Americans from Parler, from people like Douglas Mackey in Florida, who I don't even really know, who had some memes that, okay, maybe they were in poor taste or whatever, but he altered images of celebrities to falsely suggest they were supporting one candidate over another. Like, we don't get that. Like, if you saw a meme, oh my gosh, I don't ever watch movies anymore because I just feel like all I'm watching is, okay, like Jane Fonda. Like, just picture some old Jane Fonda who like loved, to like torture our soldiers, verbally, and was in Vietnam, like helping them out during the Vietnam War, helping the Vietnamese out and the communists. Like, if you saw a meme with Jane Fonda, like putting her arms around Donald Trump or giving him a kiss on the cheek or whatever it was that was out there, would you even believe that that was true? You wouldn't even believe it. And what are they going to do? We're going to just start arresting people overseas too? Like Julian Assange. We need to think about what we're doing here. We need to hold our lawmakers. We got to say, hey, get in there, fight for us, do the right thing, fighting the right way, not with sticks and stones. No, I am not asking that. I'm saying with the system that I hope and thank God we still have in place in the United States of America. We have got to get in there. And we can't be blinded by party either. Republican, Democrat, civil libertarian, Green Party, whatever. We can't be blinded by that either. We have to look at what is going to protect the Constitution of our nation. And we have to abide by that. We can't allow Mr., I want to just 17 executive orders, and I'm going to change the whole country, to just do that without saying to our lawmakers, like, hey, your job is to represent us. Maybe you should get in there and tell the Biden administration that you're not going to back whatever, or, this isn't going to happen, and find a way around it. Maybe you should do that with big tech as well. Well, before I go any further, I can talk all day to you about big tech, about what's happening in our country, but I would not be here today without the great help of people like Bill Gertz, who is a dear friend. He's a national security correspondent still with the Washington Times. One of the most, I want you to think about this. He's been at the Washington Times since 1985. And when I first went to the Washington Times, he was one of the first people. He was like a mentor for me, Bill Gertz and Jerry Sieper. Just brilliant columnist and investigative journalist, and one of the best national security folks, bar none, in the United States on China. He's the author of 8 books, 4 of them national bestsellers. His latest book is called Deceiving the Sky: Inside Communist China's Drive for Global Supremacy. This is why the Chinese Communist Party just despises Bill and goes after him. I think they find him a challenge because he's so brilliant. So but Bill has never let go. He has continued to expose the Chinese Communist Party and fight not only for American national security, but think about all the people in China under the thumb of this Chinese Communist Party. He is also the author of the ebook, How China's Communist Party Made the World Sick. And he just did this amazing column. It's called Declassified U.S. Intelligence Bolsters Wuhan Lab Theory in the Coronavirus Outbreak. And that's why I have him on here today, and because I've wanted him on my show for so long. And I can't wait to get to him right after this ad. Without any further delay, my good friend Bill Gertz. And wow, Bill, I mean, this last column of yours is incredible on the Wuhan lab.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for telling the truth. That is the key now. We live in perilous times where truth for many of the left is a moving target. Let me step back a little bit on where this story began. And about a year ago, on January 26th of 2020, I published a report in the Washington Times, and the headline was "Virus Linked to Wuhan Lab, Military Work at Wuhan Lab." And it was a straight shot. It was solid reporting. It was based on an interview with a former Israeli military intelligence doctor who had studied the Chinese biological warfare program. And he said very clearly, oh, yes, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, this sole secure lab in China, very much is linked to the military. And he suggested that this virus could have leaked from that lab. At the time, the Chinese narrative for that was that the virus came from a wet market, a wild animal market in Wuhan, which is probably about 5 miles from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Well, unbeknown to me, within a month, a so-called USA Today fact checker wrote a story attacking my piece and said it was an example of, quote, false information about the coronavirus. This was picked up by Facebook, which blocked the story and forced the Washington Times to make it disappear from the website. So I went through the roof and I went to the editors and I said, this is wrong. There's nothing inaccurate. There's nothing false in that story. It's completely 100% accurate. Facebook wouldn't listen to it, and they labeled the story as false information about the coronavirus. USA Today, under pressure from the Times editors, backed off and removed the phrase false information, but continued to say that the story was an example of a, quote, debunked conspiracy theory. Well, fast forward to January 15th of this month, and the State Department, in a very detailed fact sheet, revealed that, yes, indeed, as I reported a year ago, the Wuhan Institute of Virology is not only linked to the People's Liberation Army, the Chinese military, but that they have been conducting secret biological warfare experiments at the laboratory since at least 2017. You would think that that would be solid information. This was an on-the-record, officially released State Department report. Yet the Facebook continued as early as this week to continue to falsely label my story as having false information. So it's been a battle, but truth will out. I'm confident that when the dust settles on this, my story will be recognized as having been one of the first to say that this is one of the two paths that this pandemic began, and the most likely path, in my personal view, for where the virus began.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's common sense. And when you look at the facts, just the facts that you laid out from the very first story, which I retweeted, up until now, it follows the same type of pattern of the Chinese Communist Party and their behavior and how they behave and how they withhold information from the rest of the world and how we're still not even close to understanding what their gain of function, it's these type of tests that they've been running on these viruses, transmission from human or from animal to human, human to animal, human to human, you know, these very dangerous biological tests. But you brought up something that hits right at home for me, Bill. And you and I have known each other for so many years. I have always admired your work. I always look up to you. I think you're one of the most brilliant journalists in the country, and bar none in Washington, D.C., probably there is no one that can hold a candle to you. The work that you've done for our country is incredible. But right now we're living in perilous times when it comes to our media and getting the truth out to the American people. I have also been, flagged just recently, and this is going to be of interest to you, on YouTube. Actually, I did an interview with Yoko Ishii. She's a friend of mine in Japan who I've come to know over the last several years. She and I are both friends with Andy Chan. He was the former head of the Hong Kong National Party and is a big outspoken advocate for freedom in Hong Kong and fights publicly the Chinese government. I did an interview with her, and I'd like to play this clip for you really quick, and then I'll tell you what happened. The only reason we don't have Andy on the show right now, I just want all of you out there to understand why Yoko is on the show speaking out for Andy, is because anything Andy says right now, anything he says right now could mean his life. That means if he gets on the podcast with me right now, he may not survive. So his friends have to speak up for him. We have to speak up for him. We have to keep his memory right now alive and well in the media so that people understand that people like Andy right now who are speaking out against the CCP, their life is in danger. So YouTube has told me that they have demonetized me. They will not allow me to basically make any money off of YouTube, and they've threatened to remove my podcast altogether. And I thought, is this about like having Rudy Giuliani on the show, or was there like some election story that I covered? No, it was that podcast. That podcast has been flagged by YouTube as inappropriate for audiences under 21. And basically, if I don't remove it, I will be demonetized and could be removed from the platform altogether. So I'm seeing right now what happened with you, with USA Today, what happened with your story, what happened with me just trying to talk about the political system in China, right, is the Chinese Communist Party. And I don't want to say the Chinese people, because the Chinese people are beautiful people, and many of them have suffered so greatly and have tried to come to America and have fled China if they can. There are some brilliant, wonderful fighters for freedom in China. But the Chinese Communist Party has basically some kind of hold over our companies here in the United States, over our big tech. And they're running a game on us, and they're running they have some kind of power, some kind of operation. I don't know what it is. They own our notes. They've got our money. I don't know. And they're able to control the flow and the narrative. So how do we get to the truth?
Really, what the Chinese have done over many years, stretching back probably 20 or 30 years, is they have launched the most massive information warfare campaign against the United States. And I say this as someone who has written a book on this called iWar, War and Peace in the Information Age, which looked very closely at this. The Chinese are spending billions of dollars annually to influence the United States. And how do they do that? On the media front, they control a lot of the media by access to China. Any major news organization that wants to have a bureau in China will have to be compliant with Chinese narratives, that is, information narratives, that they're not engaged in nuclear proliferation, that they're not engaged in a genocidal attack on the Uyghurs, that they're not engaged in violating their agreement to allow a semi-autonomous democracy in Hong Kong. And we're now suffering the consequences of this because they have also exploited the business community by saying, if you want to do business in China, not only do you have to go along with us, but you have to actually lobby the U.S. government and the U.S. public to support our policy. So it's a very nefarious operation.
Well, we've seen it also with news agencies, right? Like even print. We've seen the Chinese advertise or have stories inside print. We saw that with the Washington Post and others. They pay big money to do that, to kind of spread their propaganda. That's also another issue. What do we do as Americans, though, when we see what's happened with, especially with COVID, right? This is like far beyond, I think, what people would have imagined, right? Our entire world has been turned upside down. Our nation's economy, our political system, the ability for our government to handle this crisis, and right now and in the future. What would you consider this? I mean, was this an accident? Is this something that still needs to be investigated? Was this something that was withheld purposefully from the world? What do you think is going on here?
Well, in terms of the information campaign by China, I think the key to breaking through that propaganda Great Wall is by holding China accountable for the pandemic. If you look at our mainstream media today, there's almost no mention of the fact that this virus came from China. And in fact, China's narrative is that it didn't come from China. They said they falsely accused the U.S. Army. Then when that was totally debunked, they said it came from Southern Europe. The latest iteration is that they're claiming that it came on frozen food packaging, which medical experts have said it's virtually impossible for that. So this is the key thing. The Trump administration was doing a pretty good job. They still didn't do the best job that they could. They did not hold China accountable, despite promises to do so. Right now, the world leading the world on this front is the government of Australia, which has demanded that China produce a complete and uncensored explanation for how the virus broke out. I've been following it very closely for the whole year last year and continuing to follow it now. And I can tell you exactly what's going on. And this was in my recent story. Right now, there is a World Health Organization investigation team in China, in Wuhan. This investigation will be a sham unless they get access to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. China's narrative is that it came from a wild animal market, the Wuhan seafood market. But the problem for the Chinese is all the scientists agree, and even the Chinese government has acknowledged they cannot identify the so-called host animal, that this bat coronavirus jumped from the bat to the host animal and then eventually to humans. And the reason they can't find it is because it came from a lab, more than likely. The lab leak theory is now in the ascendance. And I would like to just outline a couple of the details that were in that State Department report. They made 3 incredibly, what we would call very strong circumstantial evidence that this virus leaked from the lab. The first is that in the autumn of 2019, before the pandemic outbreak was first detected, which was early December in Wuhan, 2 or more workers at the Wuhan Institute of Virology came down with COVID-like symptoms. That has been covered up completely by the Chinese. They have not led inspectors. They have not produced those people. They have not discussed it. That's one. Number 2, inside the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which their top virologist has claimed is strictly civilian, which is false, they were conducting what they call gain-of-function research, as you mentioned earlier. And this gain-of-function research is they make a manipulated virus, and this virus was manipulated to be more infectious to humans. And the reason they were doing that was that they were trying to find a vaccine. And then the third point was they revealed this connection between the PLA and the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The experts that I've talked to who have seen the intelligence tell me that the reason is that this was probably some biological warfare experiment gone awry, and that the Chinese were trying, before you can develop a biological weapon, you have to develop a vaccine for it. So they were working on a vaccine for this coronavirus, this SARS-CoV-2, and it leaked either probably from the infected workers or perhaps a lab animal that was sold to the wild market.
When you think about that and you think about the fact that we know so little about this virus, and you're right, I want to go back to what you said, where we don't talk about China, where China is not even in our news agencies, our cable news outlets. They don't talk about it being the China virus the way the Trump administration did. It's kind of left out. It's like COVID, COVID-19. But then there's these variants that we're seeing right now from Brazil, in England, the Brazilian variant, the British variant of COVID. We really don't understand this virus. We really don't understand how it can mutate and why it's mutating the way it is, and what will it be like 9 months from now? And will our vaccines be able to withstand, I guess, that type of immunity to this virus as it mutates, right? So, I mean, I don't know. I know you talk to a lot of people in the Department of Defense. What are they saying about this?
Well, the real criminals in this case are the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government. I'm talking about crimes against humanity. And the fact that our media and our government is not demanding a full accounting of all the research, all the notes, all the researchers at the Wuhan Institute of Virology is criminal as well. It's a cover-up. It's covering up this crime against humanity. The Chinese government and the Wuhan Institute of Virology, they know the origin of this virus. They know it, and they're not talking about it. And the entire world needs to rise up and say, we're not going to have any business with China until this is resolved, because if we don't resolve it, we're going to be fighting this virus for a long time. My guess is that, the Chinese government is a nuclear-armed communist dictatorship, a genocidal regime, and they are responsible for the destruction that we're seeing around the world, economic and human. And they need to be held accountable. And I think that people like yourself and others, we've got to be pounding this message home that we will not solve this problem until the Chinese tell us what they know.
That's absolutely true. There is some speculation, and I was on Steve Hilton's show this past week, and he did a big piece on it as well, which was right into your whole expose on the State Department report regarding Wuhan, but that also dealt with U.S. connections to the Wuhan laboratory and Dr. Anthony Fauci and his connections to gain of function research that was being conducted. I know this is something that's very sensitive, and I don't know where your research is taking you in that, because, of course, when we're talking about money coming from the United States, whether that's private or government funding to the Wuhan laboratory, in particular studies that are exactly this study, gain of function research, I mean, that has to be eye-opening, and we have to be very cautious. Because the first thing that went through my mind is, this isn't just about the Wuhan lab. What other labs are we working with in other parts of the world that could be working on these very dangerous biological weapons? And we have no idea until it's too late.
Well, the Biden administration, I'm very much afraid that they're going to cover up what China has done and is doing. The Trump administration was battling the bureaucracy, both the intelligence and the political bureaucracy at state and other agencies. They wanted to release all of this information. And like I said, they basically 5 days before the end of the administration, they were able to disclose some of the intelligence that they have. They've got more. And in fact, I've talked to officials, intelligence officials, who have told me that they have witness testimony. And I've written on this as well. The Chinese biological warfare program is focusing on developing ethnically targeted weapons, biological weapons that can kill or disable specific ethnic groups. I mean, this is an unbelievable thing, and I'm surprised that it's not getting more attention than other than my and Washington Times stories and other media.
That is stunning to me, because you would think that the first thing the United States would want to do, or the rest of the world for that matter, would hold China accountable, hold the Chinese Communist Party accountable, tell the World Health Organization. Well, it was a big reason why the World Health Organization was in the pocket of China. Right from the very beginning, if we go back to not last January, even when they said that there was no human-to-human transmission of COVID, and the only reason they made that statement was because of China. But nobody's paying attention to the most important part. How far, like you said, Bill, do these biological viruses, these man-made viruses that they've been working on, supposedly, allegedly, how far have they gone down the road with this? Is COVID somehow connected? Is there something about this virus that we need to take care of?
I've reported on this earlier last year as well. China has bragged publicly that they have discovered 2,000 new viruses. Now, not all of them are bat coronaviruses. There are other animal viruses as well, but they've discovered 2,000 new viruses. So China is obsessed with viruses, and this is a clear indication that they've had lab leaks in the past. In fact, the first SARS virus leaked from a lab and killed one person. This was a devastating leak. This is this leak that we're now suffering through now. Again, how do we get this information out and in people's consciousness, and how do we get our leadership and our lawmakers and our other government people to do something about it? This is the real challenge that we're facing.
Well, Americans feel helpless, Bill. I mean, honestly, I talk to people all the time, and they're saying, look, I feel like I have no control anymore. I'm worried about my government. My government's changed. You and I have both covered the intelligence community when I was at the Washington Times. There was always this idea that even when I was there, that our intelligence agencies were going to do their best to protect us from foreign threats, right? I always believed that when I came and I covered the war. And you and I remember going to CIA headquarters, and we interviewed General Hayden at the time when he became the CIA director. I was so excited to be there for that editorial, being able to talk to him right there, on the 7th floor. And now we're seeing John Brennan, the former head of the CIA, basically saying that Americans are insurgents, that the intelligence community is coming after Americans. And now we're hearing that people in this country are afraid to speak out. They're afraid to to ask for the truth because they're afraid that they're going to be targeted, for tweeting something by maybe the Eastern District of New York, who just took this guy into custody in Florida, Douglas Mackey, for memes, for election interference. What do Americans do? I know I'm asking a big question here, but is it we hold our lawmakers accountable? We go to them. Should they contact their lawmakers and say, hey, look, I just heard Bill Gertz on the Sarah Carter show, and look at his report here. We need you to go up on Capitol Hill and demand an investigation into this. What do they need to do?
You mentioned the intelligence community. Let me make a comment on that. The intelligence community has not shined in the coronavirus pandemic. The problem is the IC does not have the medical and virological expertise, and so they had to rely on these outside virus experts, many of whom have been co-opted or compromised by China. And that's one of the big problems. I reported in my Washington Times Inside the Ring column that the State Department formed a special task force of medical and virology experts, and that they were deadlocked, but that 70% of them believed that this was likely a result of a lab leak, with a much smaller percent saying that it was a natural occurrence, something that just jumped naturally from a bat to a wild animal to humans. So the intelligence community really lacked expertise. I think that there needs to be a much more focus on the response to the pandemic. Why hasn't there been a special commission of experts to look at the pandemic? Joe Biden ran for president on the fact that he criticized the Trump administration's response to the pandemic. And then what did he do? He hired Anthony Fauci, who was leading the pandemic effort. So it just shows the level of hypocrisy now in government is at very high levels.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There is no doubt that the hypocrisy is overwhelming here. It's like I call it a tsunami of hypocrisy in Washington, D.C. It's like flooding every part of the city. And it's unfortunate because I feel like the people that are paying for it are the American people, are the people that are in the hospitals right now, the people in New York City that lost their loved ones in the nursing homes. I mean, this virus is a weapon. In one way or another, whether it leaked out by accident and they refused to tell the world, or whether they were developing a biological weapon that leaked out by accident, whatever the circumstances, the entire world has paid a price for this. And I feel like there are so few people standing up and speaking out. Part of that problem, and before I let you go, I'm going to get your opinion on this. I have to. Going back to the very beginning of our conversation, is big tech. We have never had in human history so many platforms of communication globally. Our world is so connected. We can talk to people in Nepal, if we want to tonight, and, play board games with our uncle in the Netherlands or whatever, But still, even though we have all of this technology, all of these platforms, I've also come to believe that I've never seen, at least America, never so restricted in its ability to speak freely, especially over the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. Do you think China plays a role in this with these big tech companies? We hear about that all the time. Do you think that there is something more nefarious going on here that I don't understand? Or is this a culmination of things, like a perfect storm? I sometimes tell people I feel like we're seeing a new evolution in politics, a new evolution in our nation, something that we haven't seen before in history. I don't know. What do you think?
Back in 1968, there were riots in Chicago during the Democratic National Convention. And the riots were caused by new left radicals. These were Marxist leftists who are rejecting the old left, the Communist Party USA, of which John Brennan was affiliated with. And they decided they didn't want to get beat up in the streets, so they began what became known as the Long March through the institutions, which is a Maoist concept. Mao launched the Long March in China, which led to the 1949 takeover of China. The Long March through the institutions meant that the new left radicals, these Marxists and quasi-Marxists, were going to take over the country a subversive way by going into the media, by going into the academia, by going into the business community and ultimately going into the government. Well, we're now there. We are now reached the point where the new left is in the ascendant. As you can see it, Joe Biden considers himself a centrist. And of course, he's fighting the hard left of his party, which is represented in Kamala Harris, the vice president. So right now, what these people are definitely sympathetic to the Maoist view of communism. And they want to bring that to the United States. And that's kind of where we are right now. Efforts to try to expose that are ridiculed or dismissed as right-wing zealotry or worse, or racism or xenophobia. There's a lot of terms for it, but we are in the ideological battle for our lives here. We're battling for our country and we're battling for our freedom. China's in the background. They're fueling it. They want to see the United States decline and ultimately destroyed. I've had people tell me, oh, China's no longer communist. They just want to make money. That's totally false. Every communist leader since Mao, including Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, and now the current leader, Xi Jinping, are hardline Marxist-Leninists. They had variations in their colorations, but they all shared one thing. China is besieged by the capitalist world and must defeat the leader of the capitalist world, which is the United States. My take on big tech is, and I recommended this was a recommendation from my book, I War. I gave it to the Trump administration, to the senior people on several occasions. I said, you've got to do this. And that is to create, use the national laboratories, the Energy Department national laboratories to make public utility social media platforms so that they could not be politicized as we're seeing today. What's happened today is we've seen the extreme politicization of big tech. And that's shown itself in two ways, one through social media and the other through big data collection. We've got to get Congress on board to create public utilities that are formed under U.S. laws and under U.S. concepts of freedom and democracy.
I absolutely agree with you, Bill. Is there anybody out there that's working on that right now? Anyone that you know of who isn't in the pocket of big tech?
Well, I think there's probably some good voices in Congress, in the Senate in particular, that could take up this cause. Sure.
Well, I'll make sure to get it out there. I'm going to make sure to push this. And I'd love for you to come back on the show. I think This is probably one of the most interesting, one of the best shows I have ever done. And not because of me. It's all because of you. Thank you so much. And congratulations again on your grandbaby. I hope you have a great time when you get out there to visit your grandbaby with your daughter. So thanks again for everything, Bill. I don't know how you all feel, but I feel like we've got to do something. Like Bill said, we got to get in touch with our lawmakers. We got to find out what's going on Capitol Hill. We have got to hold China accountable. They need to answer those questions. But, it's even worse than what you heard, because I don't know if you've seen the stories out there, but China is apparently... I wish I could have President Trump on because he could actually say China so much better than me. China is actually, I know this is going to weird you all out right now. And this is not an Onion story or not a Babylon Bee story. None of those. This is not a Bee story. China is using anal swabs to test COVID-19. Yes, you heard it here on the Sara Carter Show. Anal swabs to test COVID-19. It needs to go about 2 inches up in order to catch the virus, apparently. And this is my theory, guys. Because I know you're probably just sitting there thinking like, wow, Sara, why? Why take us here? Why take us here right now to China's anal swabs? The reason is because I think this is a ploy by the Chinese. Look, we have the blood test. We have the nasal swab. We have all kinds of things, to test for COVID. And now all of a sudden, the Chinese want the world to do anal swabs. I don't trust China. I'm fine. Take my blood. Who wants the government, right? Who wants the government? We were just talking about this, doing this. And who wants that job? Would you want that job? I wouldn't want that job. I would want to be. I know if you're a doctor, it's like I'm being silly, right? Because it's just medicine is medicine. But seriously, we already have tests We already have tests for COVID-19. Apparently, this one, though, is supposed to be better. So I'm going to read you a little bit of the story so I can be kind of serious and not be like a child, which I normally am. China has begun testing people it considers at high risk for contracting COVID-19 with anal swabs amid the new outbreak. And now, after hearing what Bill had to say about what we don't know about this virus, that is very concerning. And the fact that China allegedly has been involved in all kinds of strange animal to human transmission of viruses and biological weapons research. So I think we got to take that part very seriously. They are saying that more than 1 million Beijing residents have undergone such a test. Oh my gosh, I feel so bad for them because, they were forced into it, right? They didn't get a chance to opt out. Like, that's okay. I'm going to opt out of the anal swab. I'm just going to go for the regular nasal swab. That just doesn't happen in China. And remember, we're getting there. We're almost there, guys. If John Brennan has his way, wow, we'll be just like China. We'll all be getting anal swabs. Local experts are reported as saying that the rectal method is more accurate than the commonplace nasal test. So public health authorities in Beijing said that they were seeking to screen over 2 million people in 48 hours. That is a lot of swabbing in 48 hours. 2 million people, that means you need I don't know, at least 1 million swabbers. I mean, just to keep up with that time frame, I don't know. Of those people, about 1.6 million Daxing residents were to be given antibody tests in addition to the throat, nasal, and rectal nucleic acid swabs. So, we all thought 2020 sucked. Oh, boy. 2021 is turning out to be just great. This is just unbelievable. Okay, as a mom, and all of you out there, all you moms out there and families out there and everybody who's having to deal with COVID, it has been rough. But it's not appearing to get any better. And the reason I'm saying this is because they're already talking about us wearing 2 masks instead of 1. Now some people are talking about 3 masks. And now we just get this report, which, by the way, Janice Dean, I think you are amazing. Janice Dean from Fox News, the world's greatest meteorologist and the happiest person on the planet, and the woman that actually fights for truth and justice. I'm going to switch right over to happy thoughts, happy story, because, it's not necessarily happy, but the truth has come out. Janice Dean has been fighting for a long time. Her in-laws both passed away of COVID in New York nursing homes. And now it looks like the truth is out there. And Andrew Cuomo, according to New York Attorney General Letitia James, she released a report Thursday showing that the state's health department undercounted. Cuomo was also underreporting by 50% the number of COVID-19 deaths in nursing homes. And I'm going to tell you this. If it wasn't for Janice Dean fighting him publicly and willing to take him on, no matter what the backlash, we would not be getting here today. This would not be as exposed as it is. The New York Health Department currently says that COVID-19 is responsible for 8,500 nursing home deaths in the state. Now, according to the Attorney General James said in a statement, as the pandemic and our investigation continue, it is imperative that we understand why the residents of nursing homes in New York unnecessarily suffered at such an alarming rate. She added, while we cannot bring back the individuals we lost to this crisis, this report seeks to offer transparency that the public deserves and to spur increased action to protect our most vulnerable residents. Nursing home residents and workers deserve to live and work in a safe environment, and I will continue to work hard to safeguard that basic right during this precarious time. I don't normally agree with Attorney General James politically and otherwise, but this, I'm 100% on board with her. They did a phenomenal job. She did a phenomenal job as an attorney general in this report, able to expose what happened and the number of deaths. And yes, absolutely, Attorney General, go forward with that investigation and find out what was going on. I can tell you this, a lot of people, we all know this, it's been public, were put into these nursing homes. They were recovering from COVID or may still have been infected with COVID when they were taken to the nursing homes. And that's really, really tough news for the families out there who lost loved ones in New York, and for all the families across our country and around the world who have had to endure what has happened to our world and our communities with the China virus, yes, which originated in Wuhan laboratories. I like to call it the Chinese virus, right? The Chinese communist virus, because it has affected everyone, even citizens, of course, in China, families and people who have lost their lives. Everyone has been affected by this. So let us all say a prayer for those folks out there who are fighting this. And thanks again to all of you out there who are warriors for truth and justice. That's the American way. That's freedom. That is who we are. That's why I have the Sara Carter show and this podcast. And that's what we're trying to do at SaraACarter.com. And while I'm still on Twitter and have not been thrown off permanently yet, you can follow me there at Sara Carter DC. Used to be able to follow me on Parler at Sara Carter Official. I miss Parler so much, and I'm praying every day that it'll come back, praying for my good friend Dan Bongino as well. Remember, wherever you listen to this podcast, whether it's Spotify, Apple, iTunes, wherever, just give us that 5-star rating and give us a review. I love to hear your reviews. I love to just read them, and I feel like I'm in communication with you. Remember, we're all in this together, all of us. This is our nation. You are a part of this great American fabric, this story. We all are. And without all of us working together, we can't make any significant changes that'll really make a difference. We have a future to save for future generations of Americans and our children. Thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. I hope you join me again next week. Again, this is where we break the stories, and this is where we're taking the stories back. Today, I'm joined by Rebecca Weber, the CEO of the Association for Mature American Citizens. It's also known as AMAC. Explain the differences. What makes AMAC superior to AARP, beyond the fact that we don't agree with their leftist ideology?
What makes us so unique is that we truly do take our marching orders from our membership. Before we go out and about and advocate for any issue, we do consult with our AMAC members, and we do that through a variety of ways. But that really makes us very different, where AARP stood in support of Obamacare, even though their membership was largely against. AMAC will stand in support of our membership. In addition, Sara, we offer benefits. We offer benefits just like the AARP. Ours are better because we offer choices. For example, you can call AMAC for your Medicare, and we're not going to do a one-size-fits-all one plan. The AARP endorses United Healthcare, whereas AMAC has its own trusted in-house licensed insurance advisors that are working for AMAC, stand for our mission of faith, family, and freedom, and then go about offering real choices. We do a lot of things like that I think make us very different and make us, quite frankly, better.
Rebecca, thanks so much for being with me today. I'm honored to have you and AMAC as a sponsor for the Sara Carter Show. You know, for more information, folks, visit amac.us/Carter.